number of British troops engaged in full-time anti-subversion duties in Aden has increased steadily since December 1963, when the Deputy British High Commissioner, Mr. George Henderson, was killed by a terrorist bomb at Aden airport. Upwards of 6,000 British troops are now engaged exclusively on internal security duties. The nationalist scene in Aden itself is confused. Groupings and initials have become so numerous that nobody, it seems, is really sure who's fighting and for what. But undoubtedly the parent body of all the Cairo-backed nationalist groups is FLOSSY, the Front for the Liberation of Occupied South Yemen, in other words, Aden. FLOSSY's platform has been demands for the removal of the British base and free elections. The British government has already agreed to remove the base, and at a press conference last week, the chairman of the Federal Supreme Council announced his government's decision to accept the UN resolutions on South Arabia, which include the holding of free elections. I talked about this with Sheikh Mohammed Farid, Federal Minister for External Affairs and leader of the delegation in London.
If a provisional government is set up, a government which does not include some of the more extremist nationalist groupings, presumably the result will be a stepping up of terrorism and subversion.
I sincerely hope this will never happen. And I think that when they see that we are serious about implementing the United Nations resolutions, and when they see that all the states in Saudi Arabia, those inside the Federation and those outside the Federation, are sitting round and trying to implement the United Nations resolutions, I hope they will come and join. I think that any group that refuses to accept the United Nations resolution, that refuses to go to the people for election on the basis of adult universal suffrage as required by the United Nations resolution, have not got the interest of the country at heart.
Well then, whose interest do you think they do have at heart?
Well, we will have to see. I'm still hopeful that they will come. But if they don't come, if they don't accept to have accepted, and if they don't join hands, then it will be clear that they represent foreign interest, not the interest of Saudi Arabia.
If all the assumptions about Nasser's future tactics are right, the federal forces will be all that stands between Nasser and the achievement of his alleged aim of destroying the Federation, unless it can be of his own choosing, and toppling the traditional rulers. At a Federal Army camp near Dala, I talked about the Army's ability to defend South Arabia after independence with its British commander, Brigadier Gordon Viner.
Brigadier Viner, when British troops withdraw from South Arabia in 1968, the Federal Army is the only organisation left to keep peace, to maintain political stability, and to keep Nasser-inspired subversion at bay if it comes. How well equipped to deal with this job is the Federal Army?
Well, of course, it's not equipped to deal with that job at all. The fighting strength of the Federal Regular Army at the moment is 5 infantry battalions with quite a lot of obsolete weapons and an armoured car squadron. You could see from that that it's not balanced, nor is it strong enough to cope with a situation at the time of independence, a situation similar to the one we have at present.
Do you expect that when the day of independence comes, the situation will be the same as it is now?
Exactly, and probably worse. Not open aggression in the accepted term, but a stepping up of subversion and terrorism using the same methods as we know at the moment.
So in effect what you're saying then is that if Nasser chooses to stir up the subversion campaign, that the Federal Army can't stop him?
As it's organised at the moment, definitely not.
Some of the Federal Army's equipment is distinctly vintage, like these Vickers machine guns introduced into the British Army in 1916. I asked Brigadier Viner, who was putting the Federal Army's case at the London conference, about South Arabia's future defence requirements.
We require more infantry, we require our own artillery, more armoured cars, engineers, we require limited air support, and a small navy. A small country like this in Arabia, and indeed any country in the world, cannot stand alone and must make a defence agreement with a friendly power.
But the British government has said quite clearly already that it does not intend to make any new defence treaties with South Arabia. Do you think at this late hour that that decision could or is likely to be changed?
Well, I sincerely hope so. However, if it is not, then the federal government must now, at this moment and very quickly, make such an agreement with a friendly power. And that agreement must be binding and guaranteed.
When you say friendly power, if it's not Britain, you presumably mean Saudi Arabia.
I think you must draw your own conclusions on that.
How far King Faisal is prepared to help South Arabia is not known, but it's thought likely that he will provide money for new weapons. The Arab officers of the Federal Army are keenly aware of the huge cost of building up their country's defences, but they say, we need the money, so we'll get it.
Well, if the British government refused to give anything to the South Arabian government, then I think we are going to be pushed, like I say, by force, to ask for help and assist from other countries. Maybe from the, what I can say, from Arab countries, or maybe from the
Saudi Arabia,
from the communist countries, I can say.
Do you think that might be a step?
It might, it may happen, in fact, because we are not quite sure that we are going to find or to get help from any Arab country just straight away after independence. So this is not happen. In fact, then we shall ask it from the communist country. Because we can't stay a long time without anything, just to wait for another country
To give you aid?
attack us. And then,
If Britain doesn't provide you with the necessary aid and equipment?
we can ask for help from any other country, whatever it is.
Because the Federal Regular Army is the strongest organised force in South Arabia, it has already become, Brigadier Viner told me, a target for penetration. A great deal of effort, he said, is already being put into trying to turn the loyalty of the men. So what sort of men are they? Where does their loyalty lie? Above all, they are mercenaries. The majority of men get their first good meal when they join up. And with the exception of Kuwait, the Federal Army is the best paid in the Arab world. One danger may lie in the very progressiveness of the Federal Army. The men, particularly the officers, are very conscious of their newfound prestige. They are the new elite of South Arabia. Is it possible, then, that they will themselves one day want to rule the new Republic of South Arabia? Brigadier Viner's answer was this: unless a strong, united central government comes with independence, there will be nothing for the Federal Army to owe allegiance to. In those circumstances, it is very possible that the army would take over the running of the country. And, said their commander, they do it damned efficiently.
In London, the British government attitude is that military presence in the Middle East often does more harm than good. It carries with it the stigma of propping up unpopular regimes, and that to defend Aden after pulling out of the base is to invite and aggravate pro-Nasser propaganda. Bargaining is going on behind the scenes over the supply of aid, including arms, for the South Arabians to build up their own defences. Britain shows no signs of budging over the defence treaty issue, but more cash aid for the army and economy is not ruled out. The British government takes the line that a stable economy is a better guarantee against subversion than the loan of troops.